All right, everybody, welcome back to another Office Hours with all things MSP. And of course, if you can't figure it out by the people on the screen, we have channel program on today. So we have Kevin Lancaster and Matt Solomon. And it just seems like not that long ago, we had you guys on to talk about Navistack. And now you've come out with something new. So that's what we're here to talk about today. We're here to talk about MyITspend, which is something brand new. They've kind of gone through a soft launch. So if you haven't heard about it yet, probably not a big deal, but it is available. So Kevin, let's start with a little bit of introduction as to kind of where you came from to get to MyITspend and what it's supposed to do for the MSP.
Got it. Well, first, thanks for having us again. Really appreciate that. But yeah, this MyITspend is what we feel is a kind of a natural evolution of the platform that we built at Channel Program. So we launched this about 10 months ago, a tool called Navistack. And the idea, a lot of the idea behind this, and Matt will take some credit for this as well, but no, a lot of the idea behind this actual platform goes back to when I was running an MSP, a reseller in DC. We had something like 70 different technologies that we were working at one point and reselling or using them as part of delivery to some of our government customers. And so we started with the idea of Navistack, where we could, at minimum, just like visualize what our stack is, like what tools we have, what tools we don't have, what are the gaps, and that's been wildly successful. We're closing in on 1,700 MSPs on that platform, and that's a free platform, by the way. But we figured, first things first, let's help the industry try to get a grasp on what they have, because everybody, if you're like me, they're running their stack or their vendor relationships in Excel spreadsheets. And we hear that probably in about 95% of our conversation. So we started there. And then there are three, branches, if you will, from Navistack. The next evolution of this was, all right, let's help the MSPs get a grasp on their actual spend. So you can visualize your stack, but now you can start to go in and say, all right, I'm using these 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 tools in some cases. Let me figure out what I'm actually truly spending on these tools each month, and when are my contract start dates, when are my end dates, when do I give notice if I'm not going to renew. So we want to bring that level of organization, the kind of that secondary layer of organization. We followed that up pretty quickly with a tool that allows the MSP, which we're calling MyITspend, allows the MSP to look at their spend, right? But they can also take that tool and send a link out to their customers now. And the benefit of that is that their customers, whether they do this kind of in partnership or maybe they're just sending out to a prospect, right? But they can send this link out and the prospect or the customer can start to fill in all the technologies they're using, not just the managed services, the core stuff that you might be providing or their other MSP might be providing, but we want them to start adding their Salesforce subscription, their project management tools, their, all the ancillary technologies that they're using. Because what we found is that it's providing just phenomenal insight to the MSP. Again, if it's a prospect, they're getting a lot of data to help, more effectively sell that prospect. And if it's a customer, they're getting more of a 360-degree view of what that customer's true technology spend. And so that was that next leg. And then we followed the last leg or last branch underneath Navistack is what we call multi-stack manager, where maybe you're looking to acquire an MSP, or maybe you have multiple locations. Maybe you acquired MSPs or inherited customers. You can now start to look at multiple stacks and start to see what the redundancies are in your stacks. If you're looking to potentially acquire an MSP, you can send a link out to them. You can do due diligence more effectively and start to think about what does this combined stack look like downstream. And so it might have been a little long-winded answer, but that's effectively what we've been up to for the last 10 months is really adding in layers of value and really trying to help the MSP get a grasp not only on their tech stack, but better communicate with their customer, get a better visual of their customer and their prospects, and ultimately sell more effectively.
So that's a lot to unpack. You're right. It was a lot, but I think that it's important. And you went through this, the evolution from Navistack to the other things that have now come out of it. And I think you're right. My IT spend is interesting for a couple of different reasons. It's not just for the MSP to get a grasp on their spend, but it's also for the end customer to get a grasp on their spend. And I think being able to spin it in those different ways of first with a prospect who may have an existing MSP or doesn't have an existing MSP to be able to pitch against, not necessarily against that, that's probably the wrong way to say it, but pitch with that knowledge so that you can say, okay, we're going to come in, this is what you have, this is what we can do to maybe not necessarily minimize that spend, but absolutely optimize it, right? Because there's a difference between lowering it just for the sake of lowering it and optimizing it to make it the best solution for the client overall.
You're exactly right. It's optimizing it, and then, but it's also, one of the premises, or one of the things that we've stumbled on here over the last couple of months, is we're seeing, the audience or yourself, you're familiar with the whole technology distribution industry. Talk about the Avance, Telarus's, Sandler Partners. They have thousands and thousands and thousands of trusted advisors that basically pop in and out of your customers. They're trying to sell them connectivity. They're trying to sell them, kind of these one-off things. And I think until this point, MSPs have struggled to really understand, what does the competitive landscape look like? Not just, understand kind of in pretty well-defined terms what the MSP competitive landscape looks like, but what does a broader competitive landscape look like? What are these third-party threats that could come in and trying to unseat, my customers? And then we're seeing a lot of these TSDs, a lot of the trusted advisors or VARs now trying to move down into the MSP space. And I think it's also maybe a defensive mechanism. And so, yeah, it's optimizing the technology spend. It's understanding where those areas of efficiencies might be. But I think it's also a defensive maneuver.
Yeah. And the one thing that I really want to point out here is this is just one of the tools that you can use for vendor management, which is something that I talk about a lot in terms of things that MSPs should be doing, and a lot of them are not. And so this is the perfect tool for doing that type of vendor management because it pulls it all into one place.
That's
and it's
go ahead, Matt.
Oh, and Kevin, you can. And it's built completely around an ecosystem of the vendors, right? We've got over 5,000 product reviews from MSPs where they have to put their name on it. I mean, so everything that's revolving around this is around managing, evaluating vendors in the space. So that's just another piece that just makes it such a unique platform,
right? Because
for MSPs.
You guys have the tool, but there are other tools out there for doing vendor management. But the important thing is, like you said, Matt, is you guys have the data because you have the ecosystem behind it to provide even more intelligence to that vendor management.
Yeah, it was interesting going back to when we launched the first version of Navistack. We kind of those early days when we were fortunate enough to chat with you back then. We launched with the premise that there were about 29, maybe 30 core products within the MSP's toolkit. As we've progressed, we're up to 72 core products or services that are fundamental to running an MSP. And a lot of those are the tools that are in the kit, right, that are part of service delivery. But then there are other operational tools, project management tools, things like QuickBooks, marketing automation tools. And then, we even have MSPs putting in their peer groups as part of their stack because they're looking at that as an operational expense of their business. And so when we talk about an ecosystem, it's been really wild to see how expansive this has gotten. I think Matt mentioned we've gotten 5,000 plus product reviews, but I think we're closing in on maybe 700 different products added to Navistack. And so you think about just how broad of a marketplace is and how maybe at times overwhelming it could be for an MSP to evaluate technologies when you've got 700, and by the end of the year we'll probably be closing in on 1,000 different products added to Navistack. That's a lot to digest and weed through.
Yeah, and when you're doing discovery as an MSP for a new client or doing an audit for an existing one, there are technologies that you may not necessarily be able to discover through your RMM tool. And so having them list these other technologies that may not even connect to an endpoint, may not even connect to the network, is important things to find out, because at the end of the day, it's still technology and you still need to manage it.
That's exactly right. I'll give you one really interesting use case that is, well, there's two really fascinating ones. But this one, kind of to your point, we've had an MSP go in and start to work with their customers and figured out that 12 of the 20 customers that already started filling in data are using HubSpot, right? And they are becoming a HubSpot certified, organization, or I don't know if you call it a reseller or what have you. But now they have the opportunity to bring in 12 of their customers' licensing underneath of their master service agreement with HubSpot and generate even more revenue from HubSpot from licensing, and then obviously it generates potential services revenue. So it's a little bit off to the left, but we've seen some really cool use cases like that. We've got a number of use cases where MSPs going into their customer and saying, all right, you're working with 4 different project management tools. Like what gives? Why do you have 4 different project management tools? Right.
Yeah.
And so, it's to your point. It's we want, you want that 360-degree view. You want to understand everything that customer's touching, whether it's something that's going to be discovered by the RMM or managed or patched or pushed or whatever. We also want to understand those other third-party areas. And as we evolve, we'll touch on some of the stuff that we'll do to auto-populate logins, and so some of that shadow IT stuff. But that's for a later conversation.
Well, and the other thing that I wanted to point out was, and because you mentioned it, is web applications. Because web applications, typically you are not going to pick up with an RMM tool. And the only way to pick up on those is through looking through firewall logs or DNS filters, things like that, in order to find those. And that accounts for most of the applications being used by clients today.
You're spot on. I mean, it's, going back to the ID agent days, right? Where we were showing people their compromised credential, kind of showing that this is your blind spot, right? And this is the keys to, 1, 2, 10, 20 different platforms that you're logging into. And I think this is kind of a way to back into that, right? It's to help them show, like, what are these other platforms that you're logging into? What are the potential exposure points? And so we'll lean into some more of the security oriented aspects of this as we progress into Q3, Q4 this year. But we've got our hands full at the moment with all these fun MyITSpend challenges.
But there really is a tie-in back to the ID agent days. I mean, if you think about the data that was provided on the dark web is what empowered MSPs specifically back then to have conversations around security, because they were really struggling to have that conversation. And now this data, which is data they would generally never have access to, is empowering them to have these business operation, VCIO type of conversations. Again, it's still, I think, in the early stages for MSPs. So it's just a very unique opportunity and a massive opportunity to be a differentiating tool and service for an MSP.
Yeah, and I think it's perfectly positioned in that way, because you're right. The business conversations are becoming what is the most important thing, because the MSPs that are evolving more to a solution provider rather than, or a consultant almost, rather than just help desk and managed IT, because those things, we all know, they've become commoditized. And so you have to find business conversations to have with your clients that are not around just supporting the IT, because there are bigger companies out there that can probably do it much more efficiently and therefore at a lower cost.
You nailed it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's absolutely it. I mean, I think we're going to see this kind of next evolution of our industry is going to be defined by commoditization, right? You're already seeing some of the large vendors, taking a shot at that and come up with these bundled prices and driving, the barrier to entry in this industry is just, it's almost non-existent. It's so easy to start an MSP these days. So you have the commoditization, right? And then that commoditization is going to make it harder to differentiate. And so again, we're saying you can go in there with this kind of tool and say, all right, yeah, sure, we're gonna keep you safe, secure, we're gonna keep your email flowing, and you're gonna be backed up. But we're also gonna look at holistically at what you're doing as a business and look at ways to help optimize. I think that's what's going to separate the MSPs that are successful moving forward from the ones that are just hey, they open up the trench coat and say, I got this, I got that, and the other thing. So it's really about providing that level of tailored or customized service versus just widget, and the lowest price wins.
Well, I think that the widget guys are going to get acquired is the bottom line there. And then the ones that bring in more of that consulting piece are going to move forward with their clients. They probably will need less clients to make the same amount of money. I think they'll find it's more profitable. And yeah, a lot of cool things happening, but also some weird things at the same time. But I know we want to get into a demo of this. So Matt, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm ready.
All right. So let's go ahead and bring it up.
All right. Yep. So I'll go ahead and you want me to just go ahead and get started?
Yeah. Show us around.
Yeah. And obviously feel free to interrupt if anything sparks a question. But kind of, again, we just want to take people back to the start of Navistack and what we've built and where and how it feeds right into MyITSpend. So again, you're seeing Navistack, which is the free tool. It is designed for MSPs to visualize their stack, identify gaps in their stack, identify potential overlap. Perhaps you start realizing some of your vendors are offering multiple things. And also really get an understanding, maybe you don't know who offers XDR in the space. And so you're able to click into the different categories and see the different vendors that are offering these products. And of course, as we mentioned, we've got the 5,000 reviews. I mean, there's just nowhere else really in the space that you can get all this information really at the click of a button. So just incredible amount of resource and data there for you. And then it starts to customize the experience, Eric. Right here on the right-hand side, we've got upcoming events. That's based on their stack. So these are the vendors that they're investing their time and their money with. I think this is such a cool and unique thing to have. Like Mission Control's got their town hall. I mean, if you're using Mission Control, you're probably going to want to take part in that. And you know what? You may have missed the email because 50 other vendor emails went to you. So it's really an opportunity to stay on top of your current vendors. And then the other piece, and this is one of the biggest pain points you hear from MSPs, is the fact that every time they sign up with a vendor, the vendor would like them to sign up for or log into their partner portal for the enablement materials. And so what we've done is gone to the vendor community and say, hey, make this easier, because MSPs can't log into 20 separate portals with different logins. So under a single pane of glass is the common phrase. Is to just make it easier, right? Have all that at your fingertips. Have the ability to chat with multiple vendors in a single source place. So it's just enhancing the communications of the experience with vendors, while also getting access to all those enablement materials. So I'll just give you a quick example. SaaS Alerts has gone all in on this portal, where you're able to get those white labeled materials where you can brand your logo. You can get all the training videos and whatnot. And again, all of this is completely free to the MSPs. One thing I will show is, because it'll kind of tee up MyITSpend here in a second. You can switch that view from that visualization view to a slightly different list view. And as you start to build out MyITSpend, you'll also be able to see how many clients are using each one of your products as well. So it's really that ability to really see what new opportunities within your own client base are there for the taking, and of course, it just gives you that nice visual, and you can export that as well.
It's like the spreadsheet we all used to use back in the day.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny. I've had an MSP. It was a marketing person at an MSP who I guess handled a lot of this stuff, and she said to the owner, she's like, "I want that," and he's like, "We have that in a spreadsheet." She's like, "No, I want that." It's just not. It's not the same interaction. And so again, we've talked about that evolution of into MyITSpend. First, kind of the internal use of contracts and subscriptions that MSPs are incurring. So, managing your own stack, managing all of your subscriptions, so you can see upcoming renewals clear as day. Of course, it's communicating with Navistack, so it knows the different vendors you've already put into your Navistack, so you can really do a quick add. And in its simplest form, the idea is to never miss a contract renewal ever again.
That's
I had a
huge.
MSP come up.
I mean, that really is
Yeah.
huge because, I mean, you guys see the conversations all the time as well. And, a lot of it is about, hey, I missed my renewal date with the vendor and now I'm stuck for another year or 3 years.
Yep. That's exactly right. I mean, you're seeing all that contract conversations online, I'm sure in your Facebook group as well. It's a constant pain point, and it allows you to gain control of that over this. And many vendors are very good at giving you alerts, but you can't depend on a vendor to get your alerts. And it's not about the expiration date; it's about the renewal date. So you need to set up a notification date in order to give notice. Like if you have to give 60 days notice, well, you probably need to be evaluating whether you're going to renew that probably 30 days before that, if not more, depending on the complexity of the technology.
Now, Matt.
So yeah,
speaking of that,
yep,
sorry to interrupt. Does it allow them to set that? So, say their renewal date is April 1st, okay, and they have a 30-day window to notify. So that backs it up to March 1st, right? And say they want 60 days before that to evaluate. Did they get to set that, or is that something that you guys set?
No, they can customize the notifications essentially. Yeah, so they can go in and essentially customize that during like the contract terms.
Perfect.
I'll see if I can. My computer might be a little slow to do this right now, but I'll try. See if I can pull one up here, for example. All right, we'll just use Avix instead of the first there. And obviously contracts are complex. There's lots of different things that people can input. And I want to overcome an objection that an MSP might be thinking in their head, which is this could be time consuming to put all of my contracts. Here's step one. And I would just say to everybody, this is what you should be doing. Put your start date, your end date, your renewal notification date, and your total costs. I mean, you're talking about 4 things. It's not hard to do. At a minimum, put that in. And then you can go back and put the extra details and whatnot if you want. But that's the most important step to do. But again, so you talked about notice period in days, so you can literally set any type of amount up there. And then
there's that notice date I saw.
Yeah, notice period, renewal. Yeah. So it definitely allows you to customize it to your to whatever is best for you.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you that any of us who have missed a renewal date or notification of a renewal date, and had to spend another year paying $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 or more, take the time.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. And that's, Eric, let's be honest, it's everybody. Yes. Everybody's done. I mean, whether it's your business life or your personal life, everybody misses a renewal date. I mean, I had an MSP. I mean, again, I could share 1,000 stories, but Zoom Info, he had a $10,000 contract renew, and he just didn't want to renew it, but he didn't have a choice. And as a small business owner, none of us, I mean, very few of us can afford $10,000 kick in the guts like that. It's just, we're just not built for those types of things. So,
and much less hire
really
the attorneys to try and fight it.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And so, from kind of the early adapters, as Kevin talked about, we got a lot of feedback, and they were like, we would love to resell this to our customers. And, so that's kind of the next evolution. And, this would be your parent level view. Obviously, these are fake companies, but this would be your parent level view. And then you can go in and dive into each one. So let's look at like the Third Gate Hotel. So for one, they would not be able to view this part. This is your technologies that you have, right? And that feeds back to Navistack, which was in that list view. So you can really get a sense of, all right, here are the technologies they're currently using for us. And again, identify some of those gaps. And then the contract management, it's the same view. They would have a view of obviously their licenses, but you would also have this view. So you would be able to come in and see those different, and that's when all those conversations now can start to take place. And we kind of talked about it before, but it just gives you unbelievable information and insight to your customers and to your prospects. And the reason we've been talking about prospects, Eric, is that the way we're doing the licensing, when we launched IDH back in the day, we just believed in simplified licensing.
Right.
And for our early adapters, that's really what we're doing again, where we're essentially giving unlimited licensing for life with the contract. And so we don't care how many customers or prospects you put into this platform. And that really unleashes like Pandora's box for lead generation opportunities. And I'll give you an example. Would be do a business operations webinar. Maybe it's like maturing your business operations. You can come up with a different title. And the hook is, if you attend this webinar, we'll give you a free 1-year subscription to a tool that allows you to manage all of your, your contracts and subscriptions. And then obviously, if they fill out that information, you're now getting this whole, massive data dump that you're now able to have conversations around. And if they give you that same objection that we talked about, well, this could be time consuming. Shit, I'd encourage you to say, you know what? I'll come over to your office and we'll do this together. Can you imagine having that opportunity to sit with them for an hour to walk through this, and then, of course, talk? Then you have a whole slew of other things you can talk about. I mean, that's just, to me, one of the easiest ways to get a meeting potentially.
Well, and again, this sets you up as a business partner rather than just a technology provider.
Right. Yeah. Look, that again, that's what it's all about. Is yeah, it's avoiding, being commoditized. It's avoiding saying, here's our stack versus their stack, right? You're getting to that realm where it's about business value, about business outcomes, right? And technology is one of the mechanisms that allows you to, impact that positively. So yeah, you're spot on.
Yeah. And there's, again, because of the way we license it, there's a million ways you can roll this out. You can bundle it into your own offerings, but we've got this nifty little calculator as well where you can kind of play around. And there's also so much talk about getting into upstream opportunities with larger companies, and sometimes you just need that foot in the door. It's the same thing with ID Agent. We were like, sell them dark web monitoring directly to somebody that has an internal IT staff. Get your foot in the door, and maybe there's open to more conversations. Well, mid-sized organizations that MSPs would be potentially looking to get into also suck at managing contracts. I'm telling you, everybody sucks at this.
Yeah.
So, again, same thing. You could probably sell this. I know you can sell this directly, easily, into a mid-sized or even large organization, and that could be your foot in the door to have other conversations. So there's so many ways that you could skin the cat with this one. And and just like back in our days, like the enablement that we're going to help MSPs with, I talked about that presentation idea. We're going to actually build out the presentation for them. Obviously you can change it around, but we're going to do a lot of this for the MSP themselves, so that can just make it super easy to integrate this into their daily life.
Yeah, and that's what I would expect, right? If you have something that that these MSPs can use as a prospecting tool, you're going to go out and you're going to show them how to do that. Because number one, we all know most MSPs are not great at sales. Most of us weren't when we started our MSPs. And, so giving them that leg up, it's the same as your vendors who are, in your portal already, using those white labeled materials and all the content that they provide through that portal. It's basically doing the same thing, maybe on a little bit larger scale because, it's sales training, but overall the same thing. So if I'm an MSP and I want to start using this, first of all, what do I have to do to get started with Channel Program, with Navistack, with all of these things? What's my first step?
Really just going to channelprogram.com. For Navistack, it's creating a free registration and starting to build out your stack. For MyITSpend, you can simply book a demo directly on our website, and we'll walk you through this, on a more personal level, obviously. And we have MSPs starting 30 seconds after the demo. There's not some long onboarding process. We can get you started as quickly as possible. Really.
Okay, well, that was my next question: was how long does it take to onboard? And obviously, almost instantaneously.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of getting access, it's instant. Now, of course, we prefer to walk you through and kind of give you the gist of how to utilize everything, but it's absolutely instant opportunity in terms of once you sign up.
Do you have any numbers as to how long it typically takes them to like get all of their vendors loaded into Navistack?
I've seen probably average around an hour.
Okay.
And that's actually putting in all of the details. We've got a ability to upload. Coming out here is that next week, Matt, where you can upload all of your contracts in an Excel formula or format if you're using Excel today. So that'll speed it up. But we're seeing the average MSP putting in around 20 different contracts, and it's taking about an hour. And that's with start date, renewal. You can upload the contracts. That's another kind of feature in this. You could centralize all of your contracts in one place as well. And that was part of that wizard, the last step of the wizard. Do you want to upload it, or do you want to link to it, maybe back to SharePoint or something like that? So it's about an hour, but it's for that visibility and for the peace of mind and to always be on top of the renewals. It's the best hour you're going to spend for sure.
Yeah, and Kevin, one of the things I don't think we brought up is if you're an MSP looking to be acquired and call it the next 3 to 10 years even, this is going to be required for due diligence purposes. So you're going to have to do this at some point. You want to get control as soon as possible, though. We just did an M&A MSP event out in California, and not everybody that attended is ready to be acquired in the next 1 to 3 years. But we had countless people coming up and talking about it, like, oh my God, like this really just made me realize like how bad I am at managing my operations, and I like have to get control of it. Sometimes you just need that reminder, and because it's just something that's easy to push to the side until you get hit with a $10,000 renewal that you didn't want.
Yeah.
And could I have spent that hour instead of $10,000? I mean, it sometimes just comes down to the dollars and cents if you just really look at it.
So the other question that I had was, because you mentioned M&A, if I have two MSPs and they're both in Navistack and one gets acquired by the other, is there anything in there that'll help me kind of merge the two or do any of the planning around merging the two? Because likely they don't have exactly the same stacks. Maybe they have wildly different stacks. And we all know that one of the biggest problems with M&A is afterwards trying to merge those two companies operationally.
Another great observation, right, or insight. So we've got a number of the large kind of monolith MSPs that have acquired 10, 15, 20, 25 MSPs. And there's two elements to this, right? To your point, there's the pre-acquisition kind of due diligence and understanding what their stack is and what our stack is. But then can you imagine, being that contracts team and having to integrate 25 different MSPs that have on an average 30 different, vendor contracts? I mean, it's chaos. And so we actually just had a demo earlier this afternoon where they were like, oh my, I mean, it's great because every time we do these demos, especially with some of the larger ones, they give us some nuggets of things to think about to put into the platform. But yeah, so we can absolutely help make sense of that. If there are two, we get the case where there's two, MSPs that are potentially looking to merge with each other, because I know that's a big thing these days. Just give us the heads up, and then on the back end, we can marry those two stacks and help make that visual. We'll make sure both parties are in agreement, obviously. But yeah, we can certainly merge those two, and that way you have that consolidated view, and you start to see when maybe you have, you both have ConnectWise subscriptions. You may both have ConnectWise or Kaseya subscriptions with multiple products. You can start to get that visual look at that and start to normalize those as those contracts start to renew. So yes, you can absolutely do that.
And if you're an MSP that's has already been acquiring and is continuing to acquire, I mean, we literally have that tool. Like as Kevin mentioned, it's called multi-stack, and so you can have that parent level view over your MSPs that you're acquiring. So, but that's actually available literally as we speak.
That's awesome. So, I guess the bottom line is, if I'm an MSP and I come in and do this, I'm going to start with Navistack. I'm going to get my stuff loaded. Then I'm going to start using that to manage my contracts, so I'm not losing money there. But I'm also going to use it as a tool to go see where the gaps are with my existing clients, so that I can spread my stack out, get more depth in my existing clients. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to use that MyITspend portion of it to now go in probably with my existing clients first, kind of look at it from a discovery compliance almost point of view to make sure that I haven't missed anything. And then obviously there's going to be opportunities that pop up in there, and then go out and use this as a prospecting tool as well, so that I can reach out to new clients and hook them kind of on the IT spend and getting that information and being just that higher level up of, I hate to use it, but trusted advisor, in order to get your foot in the door like you've talked about today.
Yeah. The only slight correction I might even say to that is you don't have to start with Navistack.
Oh.
You can go right into MyITspend. And the reason I say that is, as you're putting your contracts in, it auto-populates Navistack. So you can actually just jump to the revenue and lead generation opportunity, and it fills in Navistack regardless. So you could go either way. And the one piece I'll say, it's so hard not going back and relating some of this journey to the ID agent days, and I know we've done that a couple of times. 30% of MSPs passed on dark web monitoring in our early days, which is, it's an incredible close rate of like 70%, right. But that means 30% just didn't get it on the early stages of from being a differentiating product. So for 2 years, they didn't take on dark web monitoring, and they lost out on that opportunity. And by 2 years, 3 years later, it became commoditized. So there's a window for all kinds of technologies. And so I'm saying, don't be that 30%. Yep. That didn't see this opportunity, because there's not that many opportunities that come along to differentiate yourself in the MSP space. And I bet my entire life on that. This is it, because it is. Kevin believes this to his core as well. It's why we wake up every day excited to talk about this type of stuff, because it's just rare to come up with something where you can make a difference in an MSP's lives and differentiate themselves with their clients. So.
Well, and that's one of the things that I really appreciate about Channel Program in general, is that is the philosophy behind what you guys are doing in helping these MSPs.
That's what we're trying to do. Like I said, I've been fortunate to be on both sides of the equation, as an MSP and as a vendor, and we've kind of seen the friction, between both sides. And the idea behind this platform is that we can help solve problems on both sides and make the industry more efficient. It's a big ask, right? Because it's so fragmented and it's so distributed. But if we can even make it 1% more efficient, then we'll have a material impact on the overall industry. And so that's what we're trying to do.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for doing that, guys. It was such a pleasure to have you on again today. Congratulations on the release of another product. And really look forward to seeing the adoption and how this affects the lives of the everyday MSP.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eric.
We appreciate your passion, your community, and everything you do for MSP.
Well,